More now on our breaking news. A second judge has ruled that the Trump administration must use emergency funds to at least partially cover SNAP benefits in November. Remember, 42 million Americans depend on these benefits for groceries to feed themselves and their families.
Yeah, so many people. And Renee Marsh is following this. Renee, what else are we learning? A very quickly moving story here.
Yeah, so these two judges, one in Boston and one in Rhode Island, making these decisions really just minutes apart. And so what we have here at this hour is that these two federal judges are aligned in saying that the Trump administration is required to tap into this emergency fund that is sitting at the USDA that contains close to $6 billion. They must tap into that fund to keep SNAP benefits going. If you remember, the Trump administration said because of the shutdown, they had spoken to states and told them that payments would not be made on November 1st. That meant that some 42 million people who rely on this program starting tomorrow were not going to have funds on their cards to buy groceries for their families. But these two judges said that that was unlawful and that the Trump administration needed to release the funds for this program. In court today, the Trump administration's lawyers had argued that they weren't mandated to use this emergency fund, and they said that the shutdown was actually not an emergency situation in which they would move to use these funds. To that, the lawyers representing both the cities and the nonprofits who were challenging the suspension of this program said that millions of people not having access to food indeed is an emergency. So this judge in Rhode Island essentially ordered them to release these funds as soon as possible. Worth noting that the close to $6 billion will not cover all that is needed to fund SNAP throughout the country. That costs about $9 billion per month. And so this judge said that the agency would also have to figure out if they would agree to look to move other money from the agency to supplement what is needed so that every American who relies on this program will get funds. Last point that is super important, that if you're watching and you're a part of this program, what does this all mean for whether you will have these funds starting tomorrow? You will still see delays because it will take some time before both the agency and states can get the money flowing once again. Back to you guys.
Yeah, that they'll expect an interruption here. Renee, thank you so much for the latest there that we have been waiting for. Let's talk about this now with Juan Sorrow. He is a disabled veteran and a SNAP recipient. Juan, first off, just you're hearing this new news, right? That these judges have said the Trump administration is required to tap into these emergency funds. How are you hearing that? What's your reaction to the rulings?
Yeah, we're happy. I'm happy, and it's a good first step, and accountability, and getting veterans what they need, or all 42 million SNAP recipients what they need to continue to provide for their families and put food on the table.
So Juan, tell us a little bit about your family and why you rely on SNAP benefits.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, I was a school teacher in the classroom, middle school classroom, and I had to step out because of some of my service-connected disabilities were worsened because of COVID, some lingering symptoms of COVID. And about that time, I started helping take care of a neighbor's two sons, which ultimately lived with me now, and she took off about a year ago. She's on addicted to fentanyl. And so, I get just one check amount, the disability compensation that I get from the VA, and that I have to make that last, for all three of us, as well. So to bridge the gap in benefits, we rely on the SNAP benefits to get us through to the second part of the month.
Juan, I mean, that's an amazing family story of a family you have created there and taking care of those two boys. If you don't receive SNAP benefits, take us through your calculations here. What do you not pay in order to pay for food?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have looked at the bills for the month, and we anticipated or started to anticipate not receiving the November SNAP benefits. And I have not paid the electricity bill this month yet, because I'm not sure if we're going to have the money to pay that and provide food on the table. So it's a tit for tat. It's deciding. Earlier you guys talked about the what bills to pay, what bills not to pay, and it's a real thing. And it's what we're having to do today. And yesterday and tomorrow until the Trump administration is able to release the funds that are in the reserves.
There's still, even though there are these rulings, we're still expecting at the very least here to be this interruption because this expiration of the funds was put in motion. What is your message for lawmakers, for the president here in Washington, as you were sitting there in Georgia, very much affected by these policies and the shutdown?
Not just veterans, but like I said, all 42 million people that receive the SNAP benefits. Like, we're in the richest country in the world. We have the most resources, the most access to resources. Like, having this conversation is sad. Having food is not a benefit. It's a human right. And so as you eat dinner tonight, this is to lawmakers and to President Trump, as you eat your meal tonight, or at some point whenever you eat today, as you take each bite, just remember that there are veterans, there are children and women who are not going to be able to have any food today. And then they're making that worse just by having these conversations or these debates and holding these funds against us, and instead of prioritizing, what we need to do in helping us and our families and our homes.
Juan Saro, thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much as well for being here with us today and talking to us about the real stakes.
Thank you very much for having me.
Jeff, has the White House reacted to those rulings that are requiring the administration to use emergency funds to keep these SNAP food benefits going?
Brianna, at this moment, the White House has not yet responded to this a pair of rulings by federal judges, both in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, about the SNAP program, the Food Benefit Assistance Program that effectively loses funding on November 1st, tomorrow. And the federal judge there ruling that the administration must effectively find the money to keep these benefits alive. But there's no word yet from the administration if they will appeal. But of course, if past is prologue in all of these challenges to administration rulings, there always, of course, is an appeal. And the judges are saying that the administration must come up with a plan by Monday to give more information about how they plan to keep this funding alive. At issue here is, yes, there is some funding in the USDA, but not enough funding available to fund the entire month of November. But it appears by one of the ruling, a Judge John McConnell ruling, that at least some of that money must be used. So even if it's a partial SNAP benefits, that is what the administration will be told by the court to provide. Let's take a look at one line out of the ruling here. Judge McConnell writing this. He said, while these contingency funds reportedly are insufficient to cover the entire cost of SNAP for November, defendants, he writes, also may supplement the contingency funds by authorizing a transfer of additional funds to avoid any reductions. So basically, let me translate that there, find the money. You've done that in other cases by paying the military as well. And of course, these lawsuits were brought by some Democratic attorney generals as well as interest groups here representing the beneficiaries. And 1 in 8 Americans rely on these SNAP benefits. But we shall say, Brianna, the president is not here at the White House. He flew down to Mar-a-Lago, his Florida resort, earlier this afternoon. The House, of course, has not been in Washington for more than a month. The Senate also is out of Washington until Monday. So the big question, will these SNAP benefits go forward by tomorrow? Very unlikely, because it takes at least a week, I'm told, or more to load the funds onto these debit cards, basically, which is what the Americans use at grocery stores across the country here. So the president weighed in as he was flying down to Florida. He basically blamed all of this on Democrats. He said Democrats rely on food stamps more than Republicans. Of course, that is not necessarily true, but he again is blaming this on Democrats. Democrats, of course, are trying to use this as a pressure point to have a larger health care conversation with Republicans. Brianna.
Yeah, lots of pressure points all happening at once. Jeff Zeleny, thank you so much for that.